Joining us for our first coach's check-in of 2021, the head coach for a long time now of Salisbury University men's and women's tennis, it's Randy Halfpap, everybody. Randy, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Great. Everything's great.
Yeah, well, here we are, a new calendar year, leaving 2020 behind, but your teams, of course, were able to practice a little bit, I believe, during that fall of 2020. How'd those fall practices go for your men's and women's teams?
In general, went really well. I think it was just different, obviously, from falls in the past where we were very much sort of short and intense. It was morning conditioning, afternoon practice. It was 6 days a week. Leading up to a competition. This past fall, not being able to have a competition sort of took that mentality away of doing everything in a short, focused time period. We actually spread it out a little bit longer. And one of those things that actually turned out to be a really good thing for us, that where I got to see them for a much longer sort of period of time, not as often as we would have normally have done. But I saw them, we were practicing up until late November. And so normally I wouldn't be on the court with them or practicing with them that late to the fall semester. So it worked a little bit differently this year, but it was one of those things where I think for development's sake, for the younger players, it was one of those things that actually worked out really well for us. So under the circumstances, it could have been one of those things where it turned out to be a good thing for us.
I've been finding that in some of our chats with other coaches around the program, that even in the midst of, well, everything that's happened and all of a sudden changes have been need to be made, you're really squeezing the lemonade out of the lemons that you've been given.
No, absolutely. And I think that's sort of, for all of us, it's, try to find the silver lining, try to find the things that are, that could potentially be good. Anybody can sit back and complain about what could have been, what should have been, we could have been doing this, and why aren't we doing that? And, we had to follow protocols and do different things, and nobody liked it, but then it's something to adapt to and figure out. I think for us as the coaches, trying to find, that silver lining, and then also, too, trying to find teaching moments to where, listen, you're going to be dealt bad stuff, and things are going to happen. You got to adapt. You got to figure things out. So that was certainly a situation in the fall, and it's going to be in the spring too. It's not like it's going away. We're going to keep figuring out ways to, for us, it's making a great experience for student athletes. And so how do we do that? How do we figure out a way to, make this work for them? Still follow the protocols and do the things we're supposed to do, but how are we going to make this a great experience for them? So we're trying to do different, things differently than we normally do. But I was telling somebody yesterday, there's a lot of stuff that did happen in the fall and will probably happen in the spring that I kind of plan on using from here on out that I didn't do for 21 years. And so just little changes and little things, it's kind of like, I actually like that, and I might do that from here on out. And so hopefully we can keep finding those types of things.
Do you have any examples of those changes that you want to keep?
I think, what's interesting is I've always been on the court, hours spent on the court, hard work. Listen, you put the work in, you play, and talking about how we used to do a fall practice of 6 days a week, 6:30 a.m. conditioning, 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. practices, and individual hits in the afternoon, and play, and that's how you get better. And then I found with some of them, some days off was actually pretty beneficial, and getting a little bit more rest and having time. And, tennis is certainly interesting in the sense of it's an individual sport in a team setting. So everybody, and of course in every sport, has a different way of preparing. I do it this way, you do it this way. But everybody performs better under certain, sort of circumstances and the way they train. But we have to find what works for everybody, what works best for everybody. And so you kind of adapt on certain things. But certainly found with some rest aspects of it, I felt that in general, some of our players, and some that I've been around for now 5 years with the additional fall, is they were performing actually better with getting a little bit more rest and a little bit more sort of off time and that kind of stuff. And so does that mean we're going to have full-on off days and that kind of stuff in the spring? Probably not, but I think I'll be smarter about when we're going to do the rest and how often, those kind of things. So just little stuff like that. And with scheduling, just trying to get the schedule together and try to piece things together. And before, it was kind of the same thing as much as possible. play as much as possible, and so maybe kind of spreading some things out a little bit too.
I want to break away and talk about that schedule making process, the sort of thing that the conference has basically left to every coach of every sport to say, hey, if you want to have a season, you can have a season, make it yourself, you're on your own. What's it been like calling up folks all across the region of the country and trying to find matches for your team this year?
Yeah, it's been, it's been interesting. It's been fun. It's just one of those things where it started a lot of it with just text messages. Hey, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? This is it. We're waiting on a meeting for this and a meeting for that. And, every school is different, and it's just one of those things where every conference is a little bit different. So certain states are a little bit different, and so on. And so, a lot of it has just been getting a feel. What are you hearing? What are you thinking? We're thinking this. We're going to practice and play, but we don't know when. And we don't. So a lot of us are sort of, the conversations have certainly been open. We're discussing playing, but then we're waiting to hear some final word on a few things. And so all of us are understanding that things are a little unknown right now, and that we're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to figure stuff out. We have a pretty good idea. I think a lot of us, especially in Maryland and the East Coast, are teams that are close by that are still willing and wanting to play. Who are they? And who are the ones that have already said no competition in the spring? Who are the ones that are on the fence? So you kind of have a pretty good idea of who is interested. And then then we're doing a lot of penciling in at the moment. There's a lot of like, hey, listen, like we'll do that. Let's pencil it in for that. And if I hear something next week that changes that, we'll let you know, and so on. And so we're kind of getting a lot of that sort of back and forth with some coaches in regards to, I know a couple conferences that are close by are having meetings today, and some are going to have some next week. And you start getting into like, listen, I'll tell you when I know something, I'll tell you, and then we'll move it around from there. So, we had a 2021 schedule done months ago, and we sort of knew, all right, let's throw that out the window and kind of restart, and let's start seeing what we can do and try to figure something out. So I know for me, and then to just sort of knowing our players and that we're in that, trying to create that experience for them, matches is going to be a big part of that. And then trying to figure out a way to do it. And then too, like something, doing something different that we've normally never done before, but even potentially doing it like a home and home type of thing, playing something twice in the same year, non-conference championship wise. Like obviously we play some schools twice in the conference tournament, but during the regular season, playing somebody twice. And we're doing those types of things. And so anything that we can do to make it fun for the student athletes and to make it interesting. If there's a good competitive match for us, and why not potentially play twice? So we're just, a lot of ideas are being bounced around, we're talking about, and then once we start to get some definitives, we'll go from there.
And I'm sure whenever the season does begin, once you have the schedule together, your athletes on both the men's and women's teams will be chomping at the bit to get back on the court in some competition. Both teams went 6-1 during the abbreviated 2020 season, and I'm sure they were all fired up to return for the fall and actually, continue what they started last spring. And I'm sure they'll feel the same way once they get back for this spring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm pretty lucky in the sense of, with this situation, this past year being a difficult situation, I had a lot of older players, and this goes for both teams. 4 years ago, having such a big freshman class for both teams, and having people who've been with each other, played with each other, sort of knew what years and normal years look like, and so forth. And so having that, it works both ways. It obviously was more disappointing to end right before spring break, doing so well. On the men's side, coming off, 2 of our last 3 matches, we beat nationally ranked teams, and then we were about to go play more nationally ranked teams down in spring break. The girls were coming together, finally started getting some doubles teams figured out, but things were looking really good. And of course, things ended. And so the bad part is man, what could have been? But then the good part is a lot of those people are returning. And then you're right, like there was an excitement building towards trying to win a conference championship, trying to reach a higher national ranking, trying to do different things. But we do get a lot of those players returning. We do get a lot of people that are, as you said, chomping at the bit and like they're hungry to do it. And so it's pretty nice to have that kind of situation. We're very lucky in that the opportunities and the way the situation just sort of worked out for them is that we do get a lot of them to return. Yeah, I mean, to say, I always felt like sometimes like with injuries, like the blessing, like that makes you miss it sometimes. Like I was away from the game, I was hurt. So I mean, we've all been away, and now I mean, if you can't be hungry to go out and get out there and play some matches now, I don't know if you ever will be. So I mean, I think we're all really motivated to get started.
Speaking of those returners, I was wondering if you could sort of shine a light on one women's player, one men's player, somebody who's coming back that you feel is due for a real breakout season this year.
Well, thankfully, we do have a good amount of those to sort of choose from. And it is sort of I always find it like talking to people about seniors, like a senior, last year's senior, a senior who's now this year's senior, and so on. So between both teams, we do have a mix of a lot of the super seniors and then the actual seniors, and then we obviously have the others that are returning as well. And it's like, and for the women's side, I always find it interesting of like, and then not doing this long enough and having two teams, but seeing consistencies between the men's team and the women's team, and that sort of being the person who was number 7 and number 8 last year, who was on the outside looking in, in basketball, the first person off the bench, but like, what do they do the following year when they have their opportunity? Some can sort of like, well, I'm not in the top 6 and not really doing anything, and others can work super hard. I think Catherine Tamis is one of those people. So like last year, she was playing some doubles. We were trying to figure that stuff out, and she was kind of on the outside looking in with singles, played some matches, not all matches. So this could definitely be a year for her to sort of solidify herself in both singles and doubles. And, getting a chance to, she was a freshman last year and sort of going through, not having a full season. And so hopefully that motivated her to work really hard and to continue her development and heading into the spring. On the men's side, it's pretty interesting. We're pretty lucky, and we're going to have at least one All-American that's going to be returning and playing, and we have a couple other guys that have played 4 years in the starting lineup, and so that's one of those things where it's sort of like, man, what can you do with that 5th year? If only, we always talk about former players and stuff, and they get done. It's kind of like, oh, I had one more year. I figured it out that 5th. Well, we have a handful of them that now have a year to kind of figure those things out and to continue what they were doing. Ryan Santmeyer last year was, I wouldn't say a surprise, but he was one who ended up moving higher into the lineup, into the singles lineup due to an injury, and was playing great for us. And, hadn't lost the singles match. It was doing great. So with him returning and sort of getting that experience and sort of tasting the starting lineup, which he didn't get a chance to do his first year, I think is going to be one of those things where I could really see him, having a great year.
It sounds like a really deep team just on the surface with known quantities, and then you've got new players, freshmen who come in each year. Who are a couple of freshmen to keep an eye on? And with the team as deep as it is right now, both of them, what do they have to do to sort of crack that starting lineup?
The easy answer is doubles. That's always been for us, like the way to sort of get into the starting lineup and kind of get yourself in there is improve. That's the quickest and easiest way to sort of get to where sort of making a name for yourself is, improving your doubles game. We do have, on the men's side in particular, a lot of people that are returning, a lot of, there's a lot of experience there. I mean, we will probably potentially be returning 8 of our top 9 guys on the men's team. And so most people would think as a freshman, it's like, oh, what do I have to do to sort of scratch the lineup and get it? And so doubles is that sort of, working your way into there, doing it. But I mean, at the same time, I would say right now, Russell Willenberg has the best chance, both singles and doubles, to kind of get in there and make a name for himself, find some playing time. Luke McMullen and Justin O'Neill both made some pretty good improvements over the fall, and we're playing good tennis come November. And so if they can continue that through January and as we get into February and March, can certainly make some noise as well. So that is going to be that interesting of like, man, we could potentially return our entire top 6 from last year's team. But could we return that top six and on top of that add in some guys, some new pieces to it, kind of shake things up, whether it's a doubles or a singles. It's certainly exciting. So on the girls' side, we're a little bit more. I kind of know if we had a match this weekend, I could tell you pretty much what my top four players are going to be. My top two doubles, but like the bottom of the lineup is where it's going to be pretty interesting. We have some people that are returners from last year that were on that outside looking in, that 7-8 players, and then our two freshmen, Hannah Carter and Sarah Cooper, both are going to be very much in that mix of can they get into that third double spot, can they get into that fifth and sixth single spot, and that's where I'm interested in knowing. The nice part is I did see them regularly in November, but what have they been doing in December, January, and February, and so on? So, it's going to be a situation where I think the way our schedule is going to work out is we're going to have more practice than we normally would leading into our first match or matches. Normally we kind of hit the ground running. We have a tournament. We have matches early February. So it's not looking like that's going to happen. So we're going to have more practice. And so everybody is very much going to be in contention once we get here, we get started, we get practicing. We're going to have plenty of time to get ourselves ready to go. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
He's Randy Halfpap, head coach of Seagull men's and women's tennis. Coach, thanks for joining us, and all the best to you putting the schedule together, figuring out the lineup, and getting back on the court.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.